Hey y'all, we back. We gotta try this again because if y'all even seen clip of the last one, I don't know what happened, guys. I was just trying to explain to y'all I am having such a not good day because I work at a grocery store, so people are they pushing my buttons and this computer, the camera just was gone. It's not even the mic now, it's not even nothing. But it was, I'm like, guys, I can't. If it goes out one more time, I swear I'm gonna literally cry. It's been such a day. Our guest is not here, but let me try to redo that intro because. But thank you guys for tuning in to the Talk of the Ring show. Obviously, if you don't know who I am, then that means you are not subscribed. So much better than the last one. We just got kicked out. There was no glitching, nothing. We just gone. But today, our guest is none other than Matt Turner. Hello.
Hi, sorry, I'm chewing on a cough drop. How we doing?
It's okay. We doing okay. We just tried doing it and then it kicked me out for some reason. I was like, oh my gosh. And I work at a grocery store, so people are crazy today. They were like, I want my groceries. I want them now. I'm like, you're going to get your groceries. You need to breathe.
Well, it's grilling season too. Now that the weather is breaking, it's nicer out. So you guys are probably nuts over there.
Yeah, it was such a day. So I'm just excited to talk about wrestling. So we always start with who or what got you into wrestling?
Well, I grew up. I'm probably few weeks older than you. I grew up in the '80s. Nothing bigger on my TV than Hulk Hogan. So Hulk Hogan, he's in my opinion, the biggest draw in professional wrestling. Um, when you're 3-4 years old, you turn on that TV and you see a guy 6'6", 300 pounds, Jack Tan, coming out to Real American, just having 15,000 people going nuts. What bigger? So I think a lot of my fandom, really, the timing on everything is really kind of perfect. And that I just remember Hulk Hogan being pretty much the first wrestler that I gravitated to.
Okay. And so, with that being said, who trained you?
I was trained by CM Punk in the Ring of Honor dojo.
A biggest plot twist, be like, yeah, that's it. I was
Yeah.
trained by him.
See, the first guy that actually trained me was this really, really nice guy, just right down the road from where I was living, by this guy by the name of Johnny Glitter. Really, really nice guy. You always hear nightmare stories of these fly-by-night schools where they take $3,500 your money and then that's it. That was not that at all. I paid the guy a couple $100 to train, and then he really only taught me the promos, how to lock up, how to take a bump. That was about it. And then I thought to myself, kind of need to get retrained. This is 2003, 2004, kind of the new wave of independent wrestling and junior wrestling was really coming along. I was living 5 minutes outside Scranton at the time, so I was going to go to Allentown to train at Chikara, where Mike Quackenbush and Chris Hero were the head trainers. The Ring of Honor just started. I think there were only 2 or 3 shows in, and me and my friends would drive to Philly. It's only about a 2-hour drive from where I was living at the time. We would drive once a month for the shows at the Murphy Rec Center, which in the summertime felt like 1,000,000 degrees. And find out that they were opening up a school and CM Punk was going to be the head trainer. So I thought, let's give it a try. So what you had to do is you had to try out first. So they gave you a tryout date and a fee. And I remember, and I was already, a trained pro wrestler. And I remember, I think it was 3 or 4 weeks that they gave me the date. And I remember going to the gym every day and doing a minimum of hour of cardio every day. Cause I'm like, this is where I want to be. Ring of Honor, where I wanted to be at. And they said they were only going to take 5 or 6 students of the 50 people that tried out. And I knew in my head, there's no way anybody's going to beat me. They could shoot me in the leg. I was so determined. I tell people that all the time. If you have a dream, doesn't matter what it is. You want to be a wrestler, a football player, a carpenter, an artist, a musician, anything that you want to be. Don't take no for an answer. Work your ass off and just stay focused. And you're going to fail. Just learn to fail forward. And I knew going in that training camp, nobody was going to outwork me. And nobody did. I think it was the next day, Punk emailed me. He's like, yeah, I want you. So that's, that was that. So not only was it Punk, obviously Punk was Johnny Glitter was the guy that kind of gave me the foundation, but I went and got retrained. Punk was the main guy. But then you would have Samoa Joe would come in quite a bit, and he would assist with the training because him and Punk were boys and still are. So whenever there were shows on the East Coast, which back in the early days of Ring of Honor, 90% of the shows were Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey, Boston. Punk was living, I think, in the Philly area. So Joe would stay over there and then on Mondays when we trained, Joe would come in. and he trained with us. So yeah, it was quite an education. It was quite an education. But yeah, CM Punk is credited as my main trainer.
No, that's great. And obviously you started as like a wrestling fan and then transferred into a wrestler. Have you ever like at that like when you started training, did you ever find yourself like being an actual wrestling fan? Like, oh my God, like I'm actually getting trained by you? Like,
Oh
I
yeah,
know me, I would like
all the time, but it's like at the same time you're still trying to be respectful, you know, and whatnot. And it's really weird because Shane Hagedorn, a good buddy of mine who actually works in the production at AEW, we say all the time about how we kind of took things for granted, where it's like we're literally in the Ring of Honor locker room. We never took pictures. This is back before the day of everybody had a smartphone, which is like we're training with Punk, we're training with Joe. Like there's Bryan Danielson, there's Kenta, there's the Briscoes, there's Nigel McGuinness, Matt Sydal, Roderick Strong. It was just that was like everyday life for us. And we look back on it, it's like, man, we should have taken a few more pictures. So yeah, of course and then you'd have legends coming in there all the time: Dusty Rhodes, Ricky Steamboat, Jim Cornette, the Midnight Express, you know, Ricky Morton. So it was pretty crazy sometimes when I go back and look on certain things like that. But it was kind of like just an everyday occurrence, and you're kind of literally just picking everybody's brain. But yeah, I mean, you're a fan. You're always going to be a fan. At the same time, you would put your fandom would be here, but the fact that you're trained to try to be the best you can, you put your student goggles on first before your fan. But I will tell this one story. So I'm working the One Ring of Honor show. I'm like 8-9 matches in my career, and I go walk into the locker room, and I know I'm going to take any chair that's available to me. Even if it's on the ground. I mean, you're in the locker room with BJ Whitmer, Punk, Joe, you know, so on and so forth. And literally there's one empty chair. And I look over and I think Jimmy Jacobs was walking by. I said, "Who's sitting in that chair?" And he said, like, he goes, "You are." Right next to the chair where I was sitting in a triangle, Bobby Heenan, Jim Cornette, and Ricky Steamboat. And then here I am right over here. I'm like, you know, one of these things is not like the other. One of these things doesn't belong. So I did the only smart thing that I would. I put my iPod on and I pretend like I was listening to music as I was training, and I just turned the volume all the way down. Them just tell stories, and it was amazing, absolutely amazing.
you're like, yeah, I'm in my zone. I'm listening to music, and then you're like, nah, I heard that's kind of funny because like if they would have said like, oh my God, you see that wrestler over there? Like he can't do this right. I mean, like it's good to be like critiqued on that, and like say like, oh, you could get better by doing this. But can you imagine like Samoa Joe being like, oh my God, he can't do that off the top rope, and then you'd be like, excuse me, what did you just say? I heard you.
I wouldn't have said a word. It was so intimidating walking in that locker room, but everybody was so nice. Everybody, again, I look back on it, you know, 16, 17 years later, and you can go to obviously Punk and Joe were my two main trainers, but even without asking, like you would have, because I worked a lot at Chikara shows, so your Chikara guys that were regulars there were Claudio Castagnoli, Chris Hero, rest in peace, Larry Sweeney. Those three guys would come to you before you even see. You literally cut the curtain, and Matt Sydal and Roderick Strong were two ones as well. That you would cut the curtain before you could even ask anybody. They're like, "Hey, kid, can I give you some critique? Can I, you want some criticism? Can I, this is what you did right. This is what you did right." And Jim Cornette was like that too. I know Jim Cornette is a very polarizing figure in wrestling in 2023, but Jim Cornette was always so cool to me, so nice, would always give me advice, help me out, stuff like that. Another one that was like that, even though I never met him in Ring of Honor. I met him when I was working in Indiana for IW Mid-South, was the late, great Chris Candido. And they just did a Dark Side of the Ring episode on him a few weeks ago. And I kind of remember, as I getting towards the end of the episode, for those who saw everybody, like Tom Pritchard, Lance Storm, all those guys were breaking down, talking about Chris. And it just rang a bell with me. I remember, I think I worked 4 shows in a row. I think they booked Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Something like that, excuse me. Chris was on every show, and as soon as I cut the curtain, because Chris and Punk were boys, he would pull all of us. I think 5 or 6 of Punk students worked those shows, and he pulled me aside, and all of us, he'd be like, "Hey kid, can I give you some advice? Hey kid, can I give you some advice?" He's literally sitting right in Gorilla. And who are you going to say no to Chris Candido for? So I just remember that being like really cool. So he'd give you the advice, and you'd register, and you sit down, and you're kind of toweling off and taking off your stuff. I'm like, oh man, like Chris Candido, I grew up watching him in ECW. And WWE, WWF, it's like, and he's literally, before I can even cut the curtain, he's pulling me aside to give me advice. And that's the way the business needs to be. If you see something, and I get asked all the time by a lot of young wrestlers, if you see something that you can help somebody with, help them out. Again, I was kind of a big fish in a small pond. I was never a big star, but I was trained and learned by a lot of big stars. So I took a lot of some of their advice, and I'll see wrestlers doing something. And if I tell you 15 things that I think you can do better, and you just take that one thing and you become that much better, I did my job. I did my job, because we're all here to try to make the business of professional wrestling better. In 10, 15, 20 years down the road, hopefully whatever I taught them, hopefully they get on a TV contract and make millions of dollars, but hopefully some of the things that I have taught the people that I've given advice to, they can pay it forward as well.
Most definitely. So like, it seems like you got lots of training in. So like, from the time you started training, like how long would you say you trained before you got like a real match in front of like a big crowd?
The first time I trained, again, when I was training underneath Johnny Glitter, I think it was 8 or 9 weeks. It was just a little over 2 months. And they're like, no, we're gonna put you in the ring, and kind of sink or swim. And that's the best way to learn. As long as you have the fundamentals down, you can run the ropes, take a bump, not break your neck, not break your opponent's neck. The best way you're gonna learn in any job, is putting people's feet to the fire.
Yeah.
Just to see. But so that was with that. But with Ring of Honor, maybe it was a little over a year. I think it was like 4 or 5 months before we even got into the ring, because it was all New Japan, all Japan, Japanese dojo style training. You're running 6 miles, you're doing 1,000 squats, you're doing 100 sit-ups, 200 sit-ups, 100 push-ups, you're doing blow-up drills, and then you're driving 2 hours home, and then you're driving 2 hours back, the next day to do it. And I want to say it was probably, I could be wrong. I know my boy Shane Hagedorn's writing a Ring of Honor book about it coming out soon. But I think it was 3 or 4 months before we even got in the ring, because it was just all just running around the building there to get into shape. And that's the way it really should be. It was a very old school Japanese style dojo, and I really like that. Really like that style of training.
Okay. So I've seen on your Instagram a lot that you're like the co-host of the Stardom, that thing. So can you explain what that is if people don't know?
Sure. Stardomcast podcast. There's a t-shirt. There's Julia. Stardom is a all-female Japanese wrestling company, obviously based over in Japan. It is the second biggest wrestling company in Japan and the fourth biggest wrestling company in the world. Obviously, you have WWE, you have AEW, New Japan, and Stardom. My opinion, because one of the many things I love about wrestling, it's subjective. You can like what you like. Again, the numbers don't lie. You can't deny that WWE is the biggest. The numbers are there. AEW number 2. In my opinion, for what I enjoy in wrestling, the long-term stories, the sportsmanship, the great in-ring action, Stardom is easily, in my opinion, the best wrestling company in the world today. It's a wrestling company that I think everybody needs to check out. You can check out our podcast really anywhere. And if you don't think we're a big deal, we were on Chris Jericho's podcast just about 2 weeks ago. So we caught the eye of one of the greatest wrestlers of all time, and somebody has a very successful podcast. So we were on Jericho's podcast. Many people listen to Chris Jericho's podcast. He has about 500 million downloads. So if you're not sure if Stardom's your thing for you, just listen to Chris Jericho's podcast. And if there's anything that me or my co-host Rob say that catch your eye, let us know. I'm very easy to get a hold of. I have tons of people asking me questions about Stardom, where to start, where to begin. Obviously, they're very much like New Japan and WWE, where they have their own subscription service. It's like $7.40 a month you can subscribe to. But if you're not sure if you want to shell out that money, if you just go on YouTube and type in Stardom, they have a YouTube channel where they kind of break a lot of stuff down. Sometimes language barrier, again, because in Japanese, I love Japanese wrestling. As much as I love the stuff in America, Japanese wrestling is my favorite. 90s All Japan is my jam. But they do break some stuff down. They have a YouTube channel on Stardom called We Are Stardom, where they break things down and they give you like the English subtitles, what moves are called. And if you're not sure what anything is, hit me up. It's what I'm here for. And the really cool thing about the Stardom Cast podcast is I'm over here in Pennsylvania, northeastern Pennsylvania. The guy who originated the podcast 3 years ago, he's in England, and we never met before. So it's like you have 2 males, one in America, one in England, talking about a wrestling company that's based on all female wrestlers. So we cover quite a bit of ground. It's an absolute blast. We're recording 4 or 5 shows a week between our Patreon and the weekly show. So it keeps us plenty busy. And again, it is the number 1 growing wrestling company in the world. And like I said, the number 4th biggest wrestling company in the world. And considering it's based just in Japan and it's just based on female talent, I mean, it's really unprecedented what they're doing over there in Stardom.
Most definitely. I remember seeing like that post with you and Chris Jericho. I'm like, isn't that the guy that's on like AEW and like he was just wearing heels not that long ago? I was like, oh my God. Like, I think I'm too much of a fan to have like those big timers. Like, if they ever came on my podcast, I'd be like, what do I even ask? Like, what are the questions I have? Like, they're right in front of me, but I'll be like, what's your name? Like, how are you? I mean, too much
starstruck. No, you gotta, one of the many fantastic lessons CM Punk taught me that I still use to this day. If you don't ask, the answer is always no. So you have a podcast, reach out to other people other than local independent. You never know. And if they say no or don't respond, hit them back in 2-3 months as you're growing your show. Build a resume. Here's what I had on my show. And that goes for everybody. I get to live my dream. I have so many dreams that I live literally on a daily basis. I live by the motto, bad days don't exist. I've not had a bad day in 18 years. Bad stuff happens to everybody all the time. Pull the positives out of it, bust your ass, do what you need to do, whether it's podcasting, pro wrestling, you want to learn to play the violin, whatever, build up a trade, build up your confidence, build up your work ethic, and shoot for the moon. We only get one chance in this life. It's not a video game where you get unlimited continues, or you can put I'm a kid from the 80s. You put the quarter in to get extra lives. There's no cheat code. You only get one chance at life, folks. Go and ask. All right, let's go. By all means, how long have you been doing this podcast?
Since October, so almost like 8 months.
Okay, yeah, can we keep building it up? Build up your resume. Show that my downloads went from here to here, my listeners went from here to here, my social media went from here to here, and who knows? Go talk to a Chris Jericho. Go send an email out to Daniel Garcia. Go shoot an email out to a Mickie James. You never know. You never know. Like I always say, if you don't ask, the answer is always no.
Exactly. So obviously you said you're like Pennsylvania based. I'm Pennsylvania based. And that's why I'm sure I've seen you at a show before. I don't know what show. I've been to so many shows. But recently, so I got into wrestling when I was 6 years old. And like my dad, like the indie scene. And my dad has been like the biggest supporter. He's the one who took me to my first show. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. And then my dad will be like, do you want to go back? I'm like, oh yeah, this is amazing. But my dad, he's a big hype. He's my hype man. He's always like my manager. So he's in the chat hyping up your name. Because he's the best. If he chants your name or hypes you up, you've made the list.
That's awesome. And it's really good to support your friends, your kids, whatever, because it's you just can't beat that. You can't. And even when you have people, even there's sometimes my wife will be like, it's a little too far-fetched for you, and I'll be like, no, I'm gonna prove you wrong. When I first got into wrestling, when I graduated high school, I was like 115 pounds, soaking wet, holding a brick. And my dad, who's one of my biggest supporters, was like, I have a better chance of getting in the NFL than you do in getting wrestling. And I'm like, I'll show you. So it is nice where you can people support you, and I'm very big on having the right group of people around you to support you. But at the same time, when some people tell me, oh, you can't do that, and I'm like, oh, that's the best motivation you could have given me, because I'm going to prove you wrong, and I will prove you wrong each and every time. It's not, again, may sound corny, another thing that I live by. The only person that can stop you from following your dreams is that person that looks back at you in the mirror, and that's the damn truth. But that's awesome that your dad supports you. So is your dad, did he grow up as a wrestling fan?
I'd say yeah. He also did like backyard wrestling, which yeah. It's not the same.
Who is some of his favorites? Because I grew up in the 80s, basically the golden era of wrestling. But my dad will share stories from like the 70s, and then like right before like I was born, getting in the 80s. So like, who is some of his favorite wrestlers growing up?
The Hardy Boys. He always talks so highly of the Hardy Boys, more like Roman Reigns. He said he commented and said, "Yeah, I grew up on WWF."
Yeah, my dad's favorite wrestler of all time is Roddy Piper. So again, I'm proud. I'm a generation, before you. So yeah, we always get into deep discussions on Roddy Piper, which is always fun.
Yeah, that's way too much, too long before my
You can
time.
always go back and study it. Like I mean, we just one of the best wrestlers ever just passed away about a month ago. Superstar Billy Graham, and his prime was way before I was born. But with the world being as small as it is now, with YouTube and all the stuff on social media, you can go back and study those people within a click. Just by going on YouTube or trying to find something or having somebody send you a link. I got into my huge fandom in the 90s. Okay, that's where I discovered Japanese wrestling. And I remember tape training with people in Japan where you're waiting, you'd hear about this big show that like Mitsuharu Misawa fought Toshiaki Kawada on, and it's getting all these rave reviews. And then it's like you're literally waiting 6 to 7 weeks for this like fourth generation VHS tape that's all grainy and stuff. It's like, oh, you kids have no idea how easy you have it. You literally can go on YouTube and type in Misawa versus Kawada, and you just get like 14 matches with a click.
Yeah.
Man, I used to have to wait 6 weeks for that tape to come from Japan.
All right. Yeah, that's how it is. But you have like the Japanese podcast. Do you speak Japanese?
No, I always make a to-do list for every week, every month, and every year. And I don't speak. And I've been diehard Japanese wrestling fan since 96, 97, and I know very, very little. I do plan on going to Japan sometime next year to cover a show. So that is definitely something that I have to do. I don't know where I'm going to fit the time in, but I will make it happen one way or another. But I always keep saying for my monthly goal or my quarterly goal is to start learning some Japanese. I just never get around to it. So I do have to carve out some time to start learning some Japanese.
Okay. So my dad says I'm an 80s baby. Hulk Hogan, Ultimate Warrior, Ricky Steamboat.
Ricky Steamboat's my all-time favorite wrestler. All right, me and your dad are okay. Yeah, my all-time favorite wrestler is Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
I'll have to do my homework because I only know Hulk Hogan and kind of Ultimate Warrior. But
so you never seen Ricky Steamboat wrestle?
I mean, I know faces and not names, so I
You
probably do.
There is a trilogy of matches in 1989 that Ricky Steamboat had with Ric Flair. You absolutely need to see those matches, and you need to see Ricky Steamboat versus Macho Man Randy Savage from WrestleMania. They're 4 absolutely must-see matches. I don't care if you're born in the 40s or you're born in 2020. You need to see those 4 matches. The 89 trilogy with Ric Flair and the WrestleMania 3 match with Macho Man Randy Savage.
Okay, looks like I got homework, y'all.
You got homework to do.
Right? Okay, so if people don't know, are you more of like a baby face or a heel?
Baby face. I've done probably 80% of my career, maybe more than that, 85% of my career as a baby face. Mostly I tag probably with another wrestler you've seen, Andy Header. We haven't teamed much that this year. We're actually, just because his schedule and my schedule haven't lined up, and I believe we have some stuff lined up from the end of the summer to the end of the year. So majority of the stuff I do is with him. So most stuff I do is a baby face. I like selling. I like just getting my ass kicked and just selling, just making the heel look good. So that's kind of what I'm good at.
No, it is cool, like with wrestling, like you get to see like wrestlers grow up. Like I've known Andy Header for so long, and like he's seen me grow up, and I've seen him grow as a character. Like I remember him being a heel, like he's a soft baby face now, but like when he was a heel, he was like aggressive. I'm like, oh, and like when he came out as a baby face, I'm like, I don't know if I like this. Like it's for some people, but not for everyone.
He's a real life baby face. He's the best
dude.
He's the best dude. Yeah, me and him go to we go to New York Comic Con every year. That's always a blast. I'm sure you've seen the pictures where one day he dresses up like a girl, the next day he dresses up as a guy. It's an absolute riot, absolute blast. So yeah, Andy Header is my best friend in the business, and it's just like I said, his schedule, my schedule. I've been taking less booking, leaning more towards doing stuff on the podcast. Plus, it's a lot easier on my body. So yeah, we've been talking a lot back and forth, just trying to line dates up to get us back in the ring as a tag, because as much as I enjoy singles, and I love tagging, and I love tagging with him. It's so easy and so much fun because we know each other's stuff. We know each other's timing. We know what each other's thinking. Literally to the point where we did a show about 2 years ago, and Andy was working a show about an hour away, and they put him on first. And then the show that I was at that he was working, we were like semi-main. So this way he can get to do the double shot. So we were doing an 8-person tag. Something happened. We hit traffic, or there was an accident. So I knew his moves. So literally, he walked in as the team we were wrestling, their music played, and I said, "You need to know this. You need to know this. I'm taking the heat." And the other two guys that were in our match, I think we were tagging with the stepdads. I go, "You tell Andy where his moves are. He'll know." So literally, I told him the two things he was doing as we were walking out, and as I was getting beat up, taking the heat. They were calling his other spots. The match gets done. He goes, "Boy," he goes, "You knew my stuff better than you knew better than I did." I was like, so when you have that chemistry with anybody, whether it's a relationship, whether you have like you with your father, and I have with my father, whether you have it in a marriage, father son, father daughter, tag team business partner. There's really it doesn't make work. It makes what you're doing a lot fun, and it just makes you want to work harder to improve that product or that relationship, and that's 100% what I have with Andy.
No, yeah, and that's great. Like that you guys have that bond. Like I know I've seen so many pictures of you two, and I'm sure I've seen you wrestled somewhere before, but I go everywhere, so I don't know.
Where's some of the promotions you usually go to, like your main ones?
PPW, BPW, like starting now, and then there's like back then I did like True Wrestling.
That's probably where you see me, because me and Andy
Yeah.
teamed a lot of True Wrestling. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Smash Wrestling. I don't think I've been to one of those shows though, but
No.
True Wrestling I think is the one that I've seen you at.
I'm almost positive. Yeah, I wish Sean would run more, but he's gotten the rap. The world's real. He's had it tough. He's the stuff that he's gone through. I don't even know how he bounced back, and my thoughts and prayers are with him and his family every day. So I don't think he's running over a year. So and I know Smash, my buddy Rosh runs that. He's a ultimate good brother, but he runs on Sundays, and my Sundays are just jam packed busy. But I know they're another company that I've been talking back and forth with trying to get me and Andy in again. It's just the timing. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. So what would you say is your favorite thing about wrestling?
Everything. The connection with the fans, maybe. Kind of the way it makes you feel. I never really kind of can put it into words until I heard I was probably wrestling about 7-8 years, and I heard Dusty Rhodes saying, after he had his trilogy of matches with superstar Billy Graham in Madison Square Garden in the late 70s, again before I was born, but you can still do your homework. He would say that Garden crowd was going so hot that when he got done, he never wanted to leave the ring because he didn't want to miss that feeling. And you've heard Stone Cold Steve Austin say it 100 times: if you can put that feeling in a bottle, you'd be a billionaire overnight, because you can't put into words in it. I think that's what it is, the connections you make with the fans, the way that you make people feel, the way that you make people cheer, the way that when you're in that ring, not just bell to bell, but curtain to curtain, is you kind of almost feel invincible. It gives you I can't even explain it. It just makes you feel so good when you're in that ring. Even sometimes if you don't have the best match, there might be one or two things that went right. You might have been able to connect with the guy in the second row or the person in the fourth row. And I've just been doing some mixed tag matches with a good friend of mine, Shelby Walters. And as we were leaving the ring, and I learned this I did a seminar with Jake the Snake Roberts way, way back in the day. He's saying when you leave the ring, you need to go leave the ring in the furthest way possible. So if you're here and the curtain's here, instead of just leaving here and going here, you want to take as much time as possible. And I remember telling her that. So we left the ring and we went as far as around as possible so everybody can see us. So even though the match was over, you have another opportunity to connect with the fans and get yourself over, whether that's giving part of your tape, giving a t-shirt, giving somebody a high five, maybe selling your back or selling your knee, and you kind of connect with the person in the third row that's wearing the Metallica shirt, and you're like, yeah, Metallica, Master of Puppets. The match is over. The match is over. You're literally making your way back to the ring, but you have to maximize not your minutes, your seconds that you're out there. So I think that there's a lot that I absolutely love about wrestling, but I think just that connection that you have with the fans and just the way that wrestling makes me feel.
Exactly. That's amazing. I love wrestling. I'm just a fan right now, but when I get there, I want to be a manager instead of a wrestler so I can yell at people. I mean, I love yelling at people the way it is. So
I better get off this podcast. I don't like being yelled at. I got enough trouble on my own. My advice is, if you're going to be to anybody that's going to be something wrestling, your manager, referee, take the full wrestler's training. One of the reasons that makes Bobby the Brain Heenan and Jim Cornette the two greatest managers of all time is because they took bumps. And if you're going to be a manager, those are the two people you study, Bobby Heenan and Jim Cornette. One of the two things that made them so great, or one of the main things that made them so great, is they took bumps. And Bobby Heenan would say that what made him so great is when he would wrestle. Sometimes if Andre couldn't make the shot or Tully Blanchard was suspended, he would be Arn's partner. He would wrestle like a manager, but manage like a wrestler. Think about that. Yeah. Think about it. So genius. It's so genius. So if you're going to do the training for it, which all for, again, take your shot. Take your shot, but go live your dreams. What's the worst going to happen? Take your shot by all means. You don't want to be 50, 60, 70 years old sitting on your rocking chair thinking, damn, I should have at least tried that. Because who knows what road it would have led to. Like, again, with me, because of how hard I worked at wrestling and how hard I continue to work at wrestling, with my day job or any day job, nobody's going to outwork me, because I can look at how many people in my field, and I'm like, how many of them drove 2 hours one way, how many times a week to do 1,000 squats, to run 6 miles? So I'm like, no, they wouldn't even do a quarter of that. So it just really brings up your work ethic, and it gives you a connection with people that you really don't even understand that you have until you have it. But yeah, go give it a try. But by all means, do the full entire wrestling training. Because then not only that, but then you'll know when you're in there managing somebody, you'll know, like, okay, they were off a half a step here. Their timing was off a little bit here. Maybe they should have done this instead of done that. Maybe I could have done this to get them bigger heat or bigger sympathy than that. So learn it all. I tell people, learn it all.
Because why not? If you're training, you might as well train for it all.
Absolutely. You never know when you're going to pull down the commentary. You're already doing the podcast and thing, and you don't know when you'll pull, if you have really good heat, babyface sympathy, or heat as a heel, you don't know when the promoter's going to be like, we need to put Harley in the ring because, oh man, that girl's got a ton of heat. And be like, yeah, I'm good. I know how to bump. I'm good to go. I can cut a promo. I'm good to go. Yeah, learn it all. Learn it all. You're never done learning. Always ask questions. Always ask questions.
I mean, I'm not necessarily like in real life, I'm a baby face, like everywhere. I'm just so nice to everyone. And I don't think I could ever like play as a heel because like I would end up laughing. So I'd be like, I can't do this. Like I'll yell at them, be like, come on, get your ass moving. Let's do this. Well, like in a nice way, but not like, oh my God, like yelling at little kids. I cannot, because then it'll look so sad. I'll be like, oh my God, come here, give me a hug. I'm so sorry.
You feel terrible. Yeah. Eventually get in a niche. Like I said, I've been heel maybe, 15, 20% of my career. And it is fun, but a baby face is so much harder, because it's so much harder to get somebody to like you than it is for somebody to dislike you. Like, again, you work at the grocery store. If somebody comes in and says hi to you, you're probably not going to remember them. Like, oh, okay, hi. But if somebody comes in, spits on you, and punches you, you're never going to forget that person. And that's the truth. It really is. And that's the truth. You'll never forget that. Because, a month from now, if that ever happened, you won't remember those 4 or 5 people that said hi to you. Or that one person that pushed you or threw a watermelon at you. You won't forget, you won't forget that. So
I swear to God, now if you said that and someone throws a watermelon at me, I swear to God, I will never step foot in a store again.
Giving people ideas.
Right? They'll be watching, be like, oh, okay, let me just throw a watermelon at her. I'll be like, that's it. I quit. I'm never stepping foot in a grocery store again. I'll just do Uber Eats and all that fun stuff. Never again.
Change my profession.
Right? Let's get out. So you said your favorite part. What would you say is like the hardest part about wrestling for you?
I take very good pride into making sure people get their money's worth. So, and that goes in the preparation and training. And I noticed that once I hit 30, 31, 41 now, that the dieting, I'm very big into, I work out every day. I'm very big into the process of working out. It's kind of part of my daily routine, but the dieting is the hardest part because pizza is delicious. Milkshakes are fantastic. And it's like, if I'm 5-6 days out from a show, it's like, I can't be eating that. It's gotta be. So the dieting is, I like chicken, broccoli, and rice. Don't get me wrong. But it's like, if I can't touch like a high carb pasta for like a week, it's like, oh, come on. That is probably I would used to say the travel, but if I'm traveling somewhere far, I haven't really done the far shows too often that much. I just don't have the time. But if I was traveling somewhere far, I didn't mind it because if you're in the if you're in a car with 3, 4, 5 of your friends, you're just talking about wrestling or life, and next thing you know, that 5, 6, 7, 8 hour car trip goes by like that. So, but I would say the dieting, getting prepared for the show. If somebody told me that I can eat whatever I want, I just have to work out an extra 2 hours a week, I would totally do it. I would totally do it. But it's the like I said, I noticed when I was like 30, 31, I was like, boy, I had this milkshake like 3 days ago. How come it's still sticking to me? So yeah, that's the part I kind of hate the most. But at the same time, you really need to be disciplined with it, and just anything that you do. Like Mike Tyson says, discipline is doing something that you hate, but you're doing it like you love it. So it's like, wow, okay, I got this big show. I know it's going to be in front of a couple hundred people. It's going to be on live on YouTube. I guess it's going to be chicken, broccoli, and rice for like 4 or 5 days. So yeah, and nothing but water.
Oh gosh, that's like one of those things. Like I want to start training like soon, and he's like, well, like all these trainers like, well, you got to start dieting, you got to work out. I'm like, oh, are you serious? How am I supposed to like I eat one donut like. I shouldn't say every day because like whenever I work at a grocery store, obviously they have the
You're picking.
bakery,
You're picking.
and like
Yeah.
at least once a day I have the donut. I'm like, and it's like Fruit Loops and Fruity Pebble donuts work. Like you can't go wrong with that.
Yeah, it's very tempting. I used to work in a pizza parlor in Old Forge, which it's known as pizza capital of the world. So it's like you before you even know it, you're eating because you're always picking at pizza, this, that, and the other thing. You're walking in the cooler, get this or that, and like, man, I ate like crap today, but I didn't even stop. But the one thing I tell people, the one thing that I really enjoy about working out, it gets my mind right. Like I do my workouts very early in the morning before I leave for work. So any stress or any negativity that I have, it's gone by like 6:30 by the time I get home from the gym. So I would, if I were you, I would just start small. What's nice is I have a lot of my friends, they have home gyms, this or that. I'm like, I just can't, I wouldn't be able to do it. I need to get out of the house. Much I love my wife and my daughter. I need to get out of the house. I go, and I'm a very people person. I love people. But when I go to the gym, not unless someone's asking me a gym question or they need me to spot them, it's just me and, the Iron Maiden, the Ozzy Osbourne, the Metallica in my headphones for an hour, hour and a half. And then that's it. And then that's me time. It's time to get my mind right, my body right. And that's that. But I would definitely try that. Try to find a local gym, put your headphones on. What I do is I always, I start with stretching, obviously, because you don't want to get hurt. And then I start with 30 minutes of cardio. Obviously, I wouldn't start there, but I would start maybe 10 or 12. I'm sure you have a smartphone. Everybody does. YouTube is the best thing in the world because you can literally find clips of wrestling matches or highlights from a wrestler to a song that you like and put it in a folder. Literally what I do. I do at least 30 minutes of cardio and I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch this Sherry theme. I'm going to watch this new Starlight Kid thing I saw set by the Deftones. Oh, this Minoru Suzuki thing set by Metallica and Jude is really good. This Tanahashi 8-minute clip with Megadeth, that's really good. And before you know it, you're just watching it, you're in the groove. I'm like, oh man, I just ran 2 miles. So that is my biggest tip because nobody likes cardio. No, if you're telling me you're like cardio, you're a liar. Nobody likes cardio, but I'll be like drenched in sweat. I'm like, oh man, I'm just about done with this because you're kind of, entrenched on that. So that is if you're just starting, I would start as soon as possible. I started lifting, I think when I was 16 or 17. That's I would at least start with the cardio, find some clips on YouTube, put them in a folder. This way you're not like trying to, you already have your playlist. You don't need to touch anything other than it gets annoying that you're in a groove and those 10-second commercials come up. But it is what it is. And it kind of throws you off track. I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? Halfway through this In Flames song. But that can be annoying. But that would be my best advice for anybody starting out in the gym. Do your, obviously stretch, do your cardio, but put your headphones on. Make sure nobody's bothering you, at least for a little bit, but don't be mean about it. And then, find some music clips you like of some wrestlers. And before you know, not that, but then you're learning. You're seeing like, oh, I like how they did the arm dragger. I like how they got in this spot. So then you're learning while you're doing your cardio, getting into shape, and you're listening to music. So you win, tenfold.
Exactly. Can't go wrong there. I mean, that's going to be like separation anxiety from my donuts. I'll see them, but I'll be like, well, I'll come back for you tomorrow or the day after.
Well, what I do, yeah, there you go. What I do
procrastinate.
Well, I make sure, like, and you have to, reward yourself, have a cheat day here or there. So when I diet down for a show, I tell myself I have a good match, or if I, if I got over, if I got the angle over, if my opponent enjoyed the match, I will make sure I treat myself. I'll find a Burger King and have a crappy burger and a milkshake, and then come home and have a beer. I will reward myself. And the next day I wake up and it's like my body hurts, not from the match, because it's like I've been eating so clean, and all of a sudden I just threw all this crappy fast food, this giant milkshake, and then a really thick beer on top of it. So, but you have to reward yourself. Just don't take it too far. Like I know, like I look at like the Rock's diet, and he has 2 cheat days a month. One where he eats like 16 pancakes, and the other one he eats like 2 pizzas. So it's like, yeah, you got to reward yourself from time to time.
Oh my God, I can't even eat 3 pancakes in a normal day, let alone 2.
Well, you see how big the Rock is. I mean, he's got a lot of carbs in that body to keep that size on.
Yeah, that's true. Oh my God, I love that eyebrow thing he does.
No, people's eyebrow.
Yeah. Oh my God. There was a wrestler I had on. His name was Lucas Chase. And like whenever he was talking, like he would do that all the time. And I'm like, I pointed it out. And he's like, nobody ever says I do that. I'm like, oh, you do. I watch that podcast back all the time. I'm like, it's so funny. Like if I'm feeling sad, I'll just be like, hold on, I gotta see this wrestler make my whole day. Because he did it at the end. I was like, that's a great way to end the podcast.
Yeah, ended on a high note.
Yeah, right? Okay, so obviously you have a daughter. Is she like a wrestling fan, or is she more like, I support you, Dad, but not my thing?
She'll come to a lot of the local indie shows I do if she's free, but no, she's not really. She doesn't watch wrestling at all. But no, she'd be like, "When's your next show?" And then if she's free, usually she'll come with my dad, and they'll come watch me wrestle. But like I said, my dad's been a wrestling fan. He was a wrestling fan ever since before I was born. Never was insane about it like me. Not many people are. But my dad only watches WWE. He used to watch some WCW back when it was still going. I don't think he watches any AEW. I think he just sticks to the main guns there. But no, my daughter does not watch any wrestling. Just some of my indie shows.
Yeah, that's okay. So if WWE and AEW called you at the exact same time and offered you to be on their roster like full time, which one would you take?
Oh, I'd have to look at the fine print. I think you'll make more money with WWE just based on, even if AEW's contract is higher, people don't realize how much that merchandise money makes, and the fact that now AEW has the merchandise, don't get me wrong, but WWE is all over the world. Where AEW is, they're just really selling merch in Canada, Mexico, England, and I think maybe a little in Japan. Where WWE's you're dropping your action figure, you're dropping the video game check. I know friends of mine that have worked there that when they got in the video game, they were making their royalty checks were like $100,000 a quarter, easy, just on the video game, just for being in the video game. So that video game thing is a really, really big deal. So you'll make more money with WWE, but I'm somebody, especially at this stage in my life, I really like being home. I spent so much of my time on the road between working and between wrestling, and I'm very rarely ever home. The AEW schedule is a lot lax. You're only working that. Well, now they have the 3 shows, but you're only like 1 or 2 days out of the week. I guess I'd have to say AEW. Just based on that. At the same time, it would be cool to work for the biggest wrestling company of all time. So heads you win, tails you win. But to answer your question, I would say AEW, but it's like neck and neck.
Yeah. Okay. So do you have like a dream place or like a dream venue that you wish to wrestle in?
Yes, the Tokyo Dome, and obviously Tokyo, Japan. Every January 4th, the New Japan puts on a show called Wrestle Kingdom. It is their version of WrestleMania, and they actually originated the 2-day shows. So to all the WWE fans out there that have seen WrestleMania be these 2-day shows, New Japan did it 2 years prior, and I'm pretty sure that's where they got the idea from, because these Wrestle Kingdom shows would go about 7 hours, and like 4 to 5 hours would just be nonstop. Like you would have your preliminary matches, get the guys on the show, get them a paycheck, which is great. But you get to those last like 6 or 7 matches, and they're all like blowaway matches. So, and I just remember and then got to keep in mind, you're on Japanese time, so I'm getting up 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, which I do all the time for Stardom anyway, so I can cover the shows. But I just remember just being at an absolute high as the last few matches are going. And then once your adrenaline shuts down, you can't even make those stairs back up because you're exhausted. But the Tokyo Dome would definitely be number 1. As far as venues that I'll never be able to wrestle at because they don't exist, the Sportatorium in Dallas, Texas, the Von Erichs made popular. So that would be another one. But yeah, Tokyo Dome. to Tokyo Dome, and I definitely do planning on going there to a Wrestle Kingdom, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay. And so, like, with that being said, has there ever been like a place that you wrestled and you were like, I really, really like this place and I will wrestle here anytime that I got the opportunity?
Probably my favorite venue I've ever wrestled at, just because of the nostalgia and the history of the venue, is the ECW arena. You know, I talked earlier about I happened to hit my fandom at the right place, the right time. You know, growing up in the 80s, biggest thing on my TV was Hulk Hogan. Once I got to those teenage rebellious years where I kind of was just like, oh, Hulk Hogan's doing the same thing. I need something edgier. All of a sudden, ECW showed up on my TV when I was 15, 16 years old. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. And those ECW fans were just nuts. But yeah, obviously it was well after ECW had shut its doors. But yeah, I wrestled in the ECW arena a handful of times, and just for the nostalgia factor, that's probably my favorite venue I've ever wrestled at. And then I would probably say, oh geez, it was the place in New Jersey we used to wrestle for Ring of Honor. The Rexplex. That's what it was. The Rexplex. That was a really, really cool venue because you had like a roller ring, a basketball ring, a full arcade. And it's just huge, easy to get to venue where the wrestling was. And the acoustics kind of went up the way the walls were built. So it's like you can hear everything from the crowd. So you'd get a really good reaction and a really good adrenaline rush in that building.
That sounds amazing. I mean, you can't go wrong there. So obviously you said that. Do you think it's gonna be like an age thing, a mindset thing, or like an injury thing that causes you to retire?
Oh, don't say that. Let's see. I have I have a really bad ankle. Me and Andy Header, you know how insanely athletic that he is. We always do this spot. Probably won't ever do it again, where our opponents will be on the outside. I'll go off the top and do a dive. At the same time, he'll go through the second and third. We did this spot, and when I hit my opponent, I came down and came down on my foot, and I couldn't walk right for 6 or 7 months. Still wrestled. A lot of it would be like, yeah, it's not healed. Header, you got to do the majority of the work, which I didn't mind. But, you know, there are times that I wake up, my neck's sore. I have 2 deteriorated discs in my lower back. When I got my back checked out like 7 or 8 years ago, the chiropractor asked me if I got hit by a car and then got ran over. That's how bad my lower back was. But I was able to strengthen as much as I possibly can. His advice was drink a lot of water, which you see me doing here, and I drink at least a gallon of water a day anyway, just to keep kind of my fluids going and keep myself hydrated.
That's more water than I drink in a week.
But hey, you got to keep yourself hydrated. I don't like to really talk about retirement because you know, when I turned 40 last year, I had people saying, when are you going to hang it up? I'm like, I feel good. I'm still having good matches. I'm still able to help the younger talent out. You know, I don't know if something were to happen where, you know, I'll never have another match again. I won't be, you know, I'll look back and say, you know, I had 21 really good years. I've wrestled some really good people. I've learned from the best wrestlers, past, present, and future. I've done some really cool things. I have no regrets. I have the podcast now, which kind of is my main focus. We're making great strides with that. So that takes up a majority of my my wrestling time. I hope I can get another 10, 11 years in. You know, watch guys like Minoru Suzuki in his 50s. He's able to go out there. Sting is like 65, 66. Ricky Morton is 66. Now, I'm nowhere near as good as those guys, but I'm like, they can wrestle into their late 50s and 60s. I think I might be able to get another 10 years out of this. But if something were to happen, like if I got a really bad concussion or if like my back was really bad and I got some advice to hang it up, I would be like, yeah, I'm okay. Because I want to start traveling the next few years with my wife. Obviously, I talked about going to Japan. I want to go to Italy. I want to do all these other things, but I don't want to be like getting off the plane and be like 45, 46 and have to use a walker. You know what I mean? To get around. Like I want to be able to go and, you know, climb these mountains and go to these hills and valleys and whatnot and still be able to move right. So I wouldn't, as much as I love the in-ring stuff, I wouldn't want to sacrifice my future health for not being able to do those trips and really enjoy them.
Most definitely. I mean, even when you call it quits and you stop wrestling, you could always still be involved somehow, like a manager, commentary. So like that's why those things come into play about training.
Sure, training. Yeah, trainer as well. Like I said, I get videos all the time of people like, can you watch my match? And I'm like, I'm going to break it down. You're wrestling in front of 60 people. There's a reason why you're wrestling in front of 60, and you have to start somewhere. But you have to understand, I've seen the best of the best of the best wrestling in my day. So, like, people want to give me matches, by all means, I will critique them. I do not charge anybody any money for it, but I'm going to break them down, and not in a mean way, but in a way that I want to make you better. So there's some people that have sent me their matches, and I'll break it down, and I never even got a thank you back, and I never heard from them again because they just think that, well, I'm awesome. I don't need that critique. I don't even know why I went to you. I'm like, well, you haven't wrestled in front of 100 people in 5 years, more than 100 people in 5 years. There's a reason why you're stuck there. But this person that's been sending me their stuff, I've seen these people progressing, and they have had, AEW dark matches and tryouts in WWE. So obviously they're looking, and I'm not saying it's because of my advice, but obviously they're looking to improve. They're looking to improve. If you watch somebody's match and you say there was nothing wrong with that match, then you weren't really watching it, because there's something you can kind of pick apart. Say, that was good, but maybe try this next time, and maybe it fits better with your character. Again, look at Hulk Hogan. Back in the 80s, what did he do? Tore the shirt off. He sold, great seller. He hooked up, big boot, body slam, and that was it, because it fit with his character. Now, if Roman Reigns did that or Will Ospreay did that, would it work? Probably not, because it wasn't with his character. So always try different things out. So the teaching thing I really enjoy. I really, really enjoy, again, because I'm so blessed that I was able to pick the ear and the brain of the best wrestlers, past, present, and future. And like I said, if I see something and I tell you 50 things and you take one of those things and it made you that much better, then I did my job.
Exactly. So you kind of said before that you used to listen to music before, like when you were in the locker room, but is there anything you do before, like you hear your music and you come out that curtain?
I stretch. I always stretch to just get my body warm, and I pray. I do. I pray. I make sure that I don't hurt my opponent, and I make sure that I don't get hurt as well. And then I make sure that I also pray that make sure I get home safe to wherever my destination is. So I always just say a little prayer. Obviously, stretching. Doing push-ups, warming up, just keep your body warm. Because the last thing you want to do is hit that mat when your body's ice cold, because then it feels like that you just went into a frozen pool. So yeah, just those few things is basically, it's kind of like my routine. I think it's been that way for 20 years, to be honest with you.
Okay. So obviously you said you did like mixed tag with Shelby Waters, but like how do you feel about like male versus female? Or was that kind of the scenario?
Yeah, I don't mind at all if it makes sense. And it's one, say the 300-pound male is beating on the 100-pound women, and the 100-pound woman's not selling, and that's vice versa. You can do male versus male. Like, well, that doesn't make any sense. As long as it makes sense, the psychology's there, the story's there, I don't mind it at all. I'm open really, really to anything. Obviously, I'm a big advocate of women's wrestling. So yeah, no, I enjoy the intergender stuff. Again, if it makes sense, even the male versus male or the female versus female, if it's something that storyline doesn't make sense, or it's not clicking, or nobody's really selling anything, or the psychology's not there, then it kind of takes me out. But yeah, if the story's there and you're giving me a good product and keep me entertained, yeah, absolutely, why not?
Right? If the story makes sense, like you just said. So like what storylines is that something that like makes you want to continue wrestling, and instead of like those regular random matches?
Both. I mean, I'm up for pretty much anything. I mean, I do like, if I'm setting a feud somewhere. Obviously, it's a little bit different, and it's not like in the territory days or WWE, AEW, where you have like the constant TV pushing it. If you're doing the indie that's doing one show a month, sometimes it's tough to remind the fans that you did that angle the month before, 6 weeks prior, 8 weeks prior. Obviously, you have social media. We can do the promos and YouTube if that company has a really good social media person to kind of put something together to remind them. But I like the stories because you can kind of build off something where it's like, okay, I like using the top rope superplex. Like, okay, Matt used the top rope superplex in match 1 and match 2. Well, he goes for it in a match 3. Obviously, he hit the first 2 times. The person's going to be able to counter. So you can kind of build off that story. At the same time, you kind of want to just go and give me a cold match. I like the challenge of trying to bring the story out. And by the end of that match, making sure the crowd got their money's worth and we got the certain reaction at the time that we wanted to.
Okay, yeah, I'm all for it. So how do you feel about like death match weapons, like hardcore wrestling?
Again, I grew up in the ECW era, so the hardcore stuff was kind of my bag for a little bit, but the deathmatch stuff, like with the, I have nothing against it. I think those guys are crazy. I think they're great storytellers. Not my cup of tea. Not my cup of tea. Which is, I get sometimes if you have a feud that's leading to, you know, a street fight, barbed wire match, tables match, something like that. You know, I'm all for that, which is what ECW was great at, just building those feuds where you would then have this crazy, crazy match. But some of that deathmatch stuff I watched, and I'm like, God, those guys they're indestructible. They're crazy. They're absolutely crazy. And I tell you what, those deathmatch wrestlers are some of the nicest guys. The nicest guys. I worked the Necro Butcher a few times. And literally as crazy as he is, like the nicest, smartest guy in the locker room. Like they're like the nicest guys. But I always say, like, you know, I'm obviously a big fan of the Japanese style wrestling, the American style wrestling, the British you know, chain catch wrestling style. Those are my go-tos. The two ones that I kind of just are not my cup of tea again is the deathmatch wrestling. Again, if you're into that, by all means, Rebecca Payne's one of my best friends in the business. She's a deathmatch wrestler, 2-time queen of the deathmatch. Absolutely love her to death. That's her deal, and she loves it. And if you're a fan of that, by all means, I don't think anything. You know, I hate it when people say it's garbage wrestling. No, it's not. There's no such thing as long as it's done right. And the other style that I kind of don't get is the lucha libre style. I enjoy the spots. Don't get me wrong, Andy Header does a lot of lucha, and it blows my mind. I like the spots. I just don't like how there's no really build up towards a finish. I just think that sometimes it gets a little too phony with certain things that they do. Obviously, the best of the best, your Rey Mysterios, Conan, Psychosis, Blue Demon, yada, yada. Those guys are great. But some of the stuff, and I'm like, oh, that looks just maybe a little bit too. And again, maybe it's just because they're so athletic and I'm not athletic at all. Maybe I just can't relate to it. But those are the two styles that I'm kind of just like, okay, I appreciate what they're doing. The deathmatch style, you guys and girls are nuts. You're way tougher than I'll ever be. And the lucha style, again, I kind of just don't get the psychology. Again, maybe I just haven't looked into it. But also, they're way more athletic than I can ever dream to be. So maybe that's why I just kind of don't relate to those two styles.
No, yeah, and like that's how I feel. I'm like all props to them and like kudos
Yeah,
to them
absolutely.
to do it. But if I ever like became a wrestler and they were like, "Oh, so do you want to do a death match with weapons?" I'll be like, "All due respect, I'm a huge wrestling fan, but hell nah."
Now I've done chairs, thumbtacks, tables, barbed wire spots here there because you're building towards a feud. And I just
Yeah.
remember doing. I'm like, man, I only did this like once every now and again. I can't imagine, especially you look at those like King of the Death Match tournaments where they're doing 3 or 4 matches like that. I'm like, yeah, you guys are way better than me. Way better than me.
Like, can you imagine just getting up and all you see on your back is like push pins? Oh, no, no, no. You'll be
Glass,
getting,
yeah.
that's a no for me. So, do you have merch and where can people buy it if you do?
Yes, I do have t-shirts. I have literally the door behind me. Right there. That is literally, you go up there. That's the geek room. My comic stuff and wrestling stuff is up that way. I have a bin full of shirts as well. If you want the Stardom Cast shirts, you can just go on the Stardom Cast webpage, or not the webpage. Or you go on the Stardom Cast webpage and or the social medias, and the links are all there. But if you're looking for shirts, I do have one where I'm Thor. Then there's a lot of ones with me and Andy Header. Anything like that, just message me directly, and I will literally go behind that door, go into my merch table, and ship it out to you as soon as possible.
Okay. And so, where do you have like, before I ask that, do you have like any upcoming shows that you'll be at?
I will be the second week of August. I forget what date that is. It's the second Saturday in August. I will be wrestling for Higher Ground Wrestling over in Mayfield, Pennsylvania. That is, as it stands, I guess I'll let the cat out of the bag. That will be the Blue and Gold reunion. Me and Andy's first time teaming in about 7-8 months. So again, card subject to change. We still have to just finalize a few ideas, but yeah, that's the next one coming up. I might have 1 or 2 in July. I'm just waiting for confirmation just to see if those are going to go through.
Okay. And so, if people want to like DM you and buy your merch, where can they find that? Like on social media?
The best way to get a hold of me is DM me on Twitter and or the Instagram at Matt Turner OF is the best way to get a hold of me there. Or if you want to send me an email, I know there's a lot of people that don't do social media, and I completely understand and respect that. If you want to shoot me an email, the stardomcast22@gmail.com is the best way to get a hold of me there. And again, if you want to learn more about Stardom, it's podcasting's free, folks. Type in the Stardom Cast on your podcast feed and or YouTube as well, and all that stuff's there. And again, if you don't think we're legit, we were on Chris Jericho's podcasts. It did really good numbers, so we must be doing something right over there. So
Right.
by all means, if you don't want it, if you just want to kind of sample a little bit, everybody likes Chris Jericho. So if you don't like me or Rob, I don't know how you went. Rob has like the smoothest voice ever. But if you like Chris Jericho, at least give that podcast a try, and then hopefully we will get you hooked and you can come down the rabbit hole. So that's the best way to get a hold of me. Questions, comments, like I said, anything about my wrestling career, you want to book me for a podcast, a show, merchandise, any questions about Stardom or All Japan in the 90s, I'm easy to get a hold of. I like talking wrestling.
Oh my God. And talk about Chris Jericho. I love Chris Jericho as a wrestler, but his clothes, his shoes, I will totally borrow them from him. Be like, hold on, let me just borrow your heels. I'm going out.
Yeah, he's definitely a rock star, isn't he?
Yeah, he's great. But thank you so much for coming on. And like he said, podcasting is free. So all you got to do is hit that subscribe button on mine and of course his. And like it only takes like 2 seconds. You just hit it and then you're subscribed. So it's not that easy. It's not that hard.
Don't forget to give that 5-star review. That really helps us out. Go and give that 5-star review. If we earned it, no charity here. If we earned it, I think that we did. Give that 5-star review. Write a nice little comment. Takes 2 seconds of your time, and it really helps us out. And also on Twitter, folks, just hit that retweet button. 2 seconds. Exactly. Friends helping friends. Friends helping friends. There's no reason why we all can't succeed and win in this world.
Exactly. So you all have a great night, and I will be posting the episodes for next week very, very shortly. And I'm sure I'll be back on Sunday I'll just announce it here, Lynette Dollars, because she's the best. So, of course, make sure you're hitting that subscribe button because you're going to want to hear what she has to say. But you all have a great night, and I'll see you next time. Bye.